Welcome to Occult Media, a sacred space where the weirdos come to create. If you ever consider yourself a starseed, spiritual creator, or an artist, it is our goal to amplify your voice through this beautiful fucking matrix. I'm your host, Candace, and I encourage you to listen, receive today's download, and join our community of spiritual weirdos. As you can tell with today's title, we're going to be diving into the energy of Winnie the Pooh and Christopher Robin. So it was about like a year or two ago where I first saw a video on TikTok talking about Winnie the Pooh, and not in a good way. It was a very dark way of how they twisted the beautiful childhood memory that I had of this child being able to talk to animals and having these fun ass adventures. And because of that TikTok, and because of where I am now within my own spirituality and my own awakening and all these other things, I would love to have us dive into the Winnie the Pooh in different ways. The first way is the way that I saw on TikTok that was a little disturbing. I gotta touch on that just because. The second thing that I definitely want to dive into is the spiritual energy within this context, and then also the imagination spirit guide kind of connotation that this show kind of eluded for me once I kind of saw it for what it really is. So with that all being said, I'm going to first start off with the concept about how Winnie the Pooh has a lot of mental disorders in regards to all of the animals. And this is the TikTok that I saw that made me look at Winnie the Pooh in a very dark way, because I really didn't think of it like that, because I'm a kid, growing up in the late 80s, early 90s. I'm thinking this is, it's a fantasy. It's not really truth. But then gotta love people on TikTok. When people on TikTok make videos and it talks about certain things and how they're related, it really made me kind of look at it completely different in a more mental aspect, right? So with that, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the disorders that each of the characters had per this TikTok video. So the mental illness that Winnie the Pooh has for himself is an eating disorder. He likes to constantly eat honey all damn day, and that's all he craves. So they labeled him as having an eating disorder. They have Donkey labeled as major depressive disorder. I mean, it kind of makes sense, because every single time you saw Donkey, he was pretty fucking sad. Like, all he wanted to do was be like in this melancholy kind of tone, and I'm just like this, and oh, here we go again. And it's like, oh my God, he was kind of a little bit of downer. Then we have Rabbit, which clearly he had a little bit of an obsessive compulsive disorder. Like, he needed everything to be perfect, and it had to be on his time, and it had to be right. It had to be in aligned. It was nothing else other than how Rabbit wanted things to be. Then we also have Piglet. This little guy was constantly having anxiety. He was constantly fearful of a lot of things, and they did label him with anxiety disorder. Then we have Tigger. They labeled this boy with ADHD just because he liked to bounce fucking around. I mean, yeah, he's a tiger bouncing, fucking weird, but to label him with ADHD is a little fucked up, but I get it. Then they labeled Owl with narcissistic personality disorder. This one got me a little bit, because I was like, damn, Owl always came through with the words. I mean, I don't really remember him being a little self-centric like that, but okay. I mean, I can kind of see it. I can kind of see that. And lastly, but certainly not least, we definitely have poor Christopher labeled as schizophrenia, because he's seeing these characters. And I was like, schizophrenia? God, what? Schizophrenia? Jesus. And when you think about schizophrenia influences the way a person thinks, feels, and behaves. It involves disordered thinking where ideas are not logically related, lack of emotional expressiveness, disturbance in movement or behavior. This poor kid was labeled as fucking schizophrenia, which to me is kind of like, how? I mean, through the characters, all I saw him get was like reassurance and like love and emotional support. And they gave him what he was probably missing from home, hence him playing with these different characters. But it made me really think about Winnie the Pooh in a very intense, dark way. And then allowed me to kind of see it as an adult complex, not necessarily as a child. I'm looking at it as a real adult complex. If I were to see that, I'd be like, okay, yeah, Winnie's got some, he needs to slow down on eating a honey. Only honey? Only honey, baby. Okay, we need to work on you not having honey. Piglet, baby, you can't be afraid of everything. Just jump. It's just a dart. There's nothing gonna come out here and get you. Okay? And even if they do, you got a motherfucking tiger as a best friend. I think you're alright. Tiger, I don't know how you're bouncing on your tail. Very interesting that you can be limber that way, but you are a cat, so, yeah. Eeyore, we do need to get you a little bit happier, baby. Like, what's going on? Like, you don't need to be that depressed about everything. What you need, some flowers, a hug? Like, what's going on, baby? And we need to get you a real tail. Because wasn't his tail like a nail or something on him? Which, ow, that's not cool. Rabbit, breathe. Everything doesn't have to be perfect. When I think of rabbit, I think of like fucking Virgos, like, and I'm a Virgo rising, so I can talk shit. Like when I think about rabbit, like, damn, you don't have to be so perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. And it doesn't have to be in a line and you freak out and like yell at people. Like, so just calm down, rabbit. And, lastly, again, but certainly not least, we got Owl here. Owl, I really did not see you as arrogant, entitled. Like, we needed to boost your own self-esteem. I kind of see that now, as an adult, but I didn't see that as a kid. And so I really wanted us to have this be like the intro in, if you will, of talking about this because I want to get like the mental aspect out of it and really focus more on that spiritual-esque feel that I'm getting with Winnie the Pooh. Because, yeah, we can label these things, but I would love to change the perspective that you have in regards to Winnie the Pooh. Okay, so now let's go ahead and dive into the spiritual aspects, or at least my POV, when it comes to looking at Winnie the Pooh. Now, as we just went through the whole mental disorders and whatnot that they labeled him, I personally would like to look at the characters as spiritual guides to Christopher. And the reason why I want to come at it from this POV is because when I was a kid, I had a shit ton of spirit guides. I was the kid that played by themselves. I am also from Alaska, so I constantly was outside in the woods, in the backyard, getting lost, literally, and not knowing what to do, but clearly always randomly finding my way home, knowing damn well I could have, ran into a moose or a deer or a bear, anything that could harm my life. But yet I was always safe and protected when I was going through the forest and shit when back at home in Alaska. So when I was thinking about this, I'm like, well, I don't want to think about Winnie the Pooh and them having like a mental disorder. I would love to see them from a context of them being like a spiritual guide for Christopher. Christopher may have not have gotten a lot of love and support because clearly he was, going into this playful like place of 6 different animals that really shouldn't be in a fucking forest. And they really shouldn't be having conversations with each other because a tiger can literally eat all of them, right? Like this is a crazy scenario where a child is getting love and support and laughter and adventure from all of these individuals. And I personally just want to look at them as spirit guides. I want to look at Winnie the Pooh as spiritual energies for this young child. And so now that we dived into the mental aspects of like the energy, let's actually take a look at each of the spiritual energies of each animal. So for a bear, the bear really does have the energy of encouragement. It helps you replenish your power, allows you to go through a tough situation or a challenge, and allows you to have a more fearless kind of personality. And whenever I think of the dynamic between Winnie the Pooh and Christopher Robin, it literally was what he was doing. He was literally trying to tell Christopher Robin, like, it's okay. Like, just keep doing this or keep doing that, or maybe try this. I may be a little ditzy a little bit, but doesn't necessarily mean that you can't really lick your own wounds and move forward, Christopher. Like, if I'm doing it, you could do it too. And it was a lot of encouragement that Winnie the Pooh was giving Christopher. So I personally like that kind of feeling for Christopher, of him having a bear that loves fucking honey, that wants to just help him feel a little bit more confident and have a little bit more strength than what he was getting, at home, especially if he was alone, especially if he didn't get any love and attention from his own family. Like, I can absolutely be more in favor of that than Winnie the Pooh having an eating disorder. You know what I'm saying? Getting on to Piglet. Pigs represent or are associated to fertility, success, prosperity, really surrounding themselves to be more inclined to happy, more blessings than negativity. Now, I will say this one is a little weird because Piglet was pretty, a scaredy cat. But he was at the same time very attracted to different energies. I don't know how to really say this, but it literally says here, the pig spirituality says the pig totem of an animal is associated with fertility, success, and prosperity. People with this totem animal tend to attract wealth and are naturally inclined towards multiplying their blessings. As a result, they may find themselves surrounded by people who are untrustworthy or manipulative. So when you hear that last sentence, right? Like, to me, I'm like, okay, Piglet, maybe he was attracting all of the negative things that Christopher Robin would have experienced. But instead of him experiencing it, Piglet was doing it for him. And it was through Piglet's, scarcity and, fear-based kind of emotions that allow Christopher to not be like that so much. Especially since almost in all the episodes, he was really encouraging Piglet. So it was kind of like, well, I get you, but it's okay. Like, you don't need to be scared. It's kind of like a nice duality of him kind of like getting through his scaredy cat phase, but still being strong enough, right? Because he's learning all these lessons. So that's how I'm thinking about it for Piglet. So then now let's dive into Tigger, because tigers are insane. Again, on a perspective of like animal food chain, Tiger would have eaten everyone in that goddamn clan. But with this, Tiger is a cat energy, and tigers are known for strength, power, courage, ambition, and helps release any fears, standing in the truth, injustice, and integrity. When I think of Tigger, I literally think of him doing that in every episode. Like, that fool was not scared. Like, he was doing everything and anything to help his family, to help everyone else. He was either bouncing around in his goddamn tail, or he was being very encouraging, or he had a lot of strength within him. Power. He excluded that kind of like Leo energy, right? I mean, don't get me wrong. I think there was a couple episodes where he was, a little scaredy cat, but at the same time, he was still overall a very encouraging, independent, strong character within the Winnie the Pooh franchise. So I think with this being a spirit guide for Christopher, it's just allowing him to be a little bit more truthful, allowing him to take courage, to just be free, to be happy, to be fun, to take a risk. To know that by doing this, you really overcome a lot of your fears. It's just kind of like adding on to that bear aspect with Winnie the Pooh. And I really do feel like that was like a beautiful energy for Tigger to really have as a spiritual animal for Winnie the Pooh. Then we got Rabbit. Okay. Now, instead of him having this compulsive disorder, the spiritual energy for Rabbit is sensitivity, it's gentleness, it's fertility, it is new beginnings, it is good luck. Now, I will say this, whenever Rabbit was doing something in his garden, carrots, really in that earthy energy of like grounding and make sure everything's in line so that he doesn't have to worry about the winter time. He was really gentle with that. He was really gentle too with all the other animals. I mean, granted, when he's a little bit of an asshole with his tendency, but he was still like very attentive to his people. And so I think it's a good way for us to think of Rabbit in a sense of him trying to show Christopher how to be a little bit more gentle, how to be a little bit more fruitful and good luck, and like having new beginnings constantly happening and allowing that energy to come in. I think that's kind of cool. Now we have Donkey, which would be Eeyore. And Donkey's spiritual energy would be hard work, good manner, willpower. And I feel like the word willpower is heavy here because, as we mentioned earlier, Eeyore has been the entirety of this show was woe is me. I don't know what we're doing. I'm kind of lost, but at the same time, I'm here, but I really don't like it. It was kind of like this weird thing that Eeyore was doing, but he still had the willpower. He still was here. Despite them labeling him with having anxiety or the depressive disorder, he was still here. Eeyore didn't go off and do anything that would suffice otherwise. So I feel like Eeyore was basically trying to help Christopher not to be in that woe is me. He was doing it for him, but he was still showing up in his actions every day to support Christopher. And last but certainly not goddamn least, we have Owl. Okay. Owls represent wisdom, intuition, supernatural power, independent thinking, observant listening. And Owl was really doing all of that. Owl was, in my opinion, kind of like that teacher and giving that inner guidance of like trying to show them to do things a little bit different. And I think that is exactly what he was trying to portray, or, as a spirit guide to Christopher. You don't have to be sad. You don't have to be all these things. Let's actually think things a little bit different. Let's look at things from a higher perspective instead of just being only centered on this one particular thing. He was also encouraging him a lot to really trust his own energy and trust what he's feeling in regards to what he should do and where to go. It really was like a wisdom-y, intuition-y, independent thinking kind of spirit animal for Christopher Robin to have. And I personally think this is a great way for us to think about Winnie the Pooh rather than us thinking about them having a mental disorder. So now that we're on to the third option of kind of viewing this show differently, I want to tap into the spirit guide-esque of this that I think is so important. As a child, as I mentioned earlier, as a child, I know when I was younger in Alaska, I had a lot of spiritual guides that would protect me in a different way. And I think particularly if you are a child of self, like if you're the only child, you are probably way more susceptible to this because your energy, or if there's like a gap between you and your siblings, your energy was really different as a child, and they wanted to protect that innocent, childlike energy within you as much as possible. So with that kind of being the context, when I thought about Winnie the Pooh, I really wanted to tap into how spirit guides, even today, will still come in the form of things that you can relate to things that are still, childlike to you, but then also still wanting to protect you. Whether if your spirit guides are aliens, star seeds, ancestors, gods, angels, deities, I don't give a shit. They are coming in a way that you are comfortable with so that you are still receiving their guidance. And they may come in tiny form, big form, loud form, quiet form. They may be something that you need in that moment in order for you to learn a lesson, or they may come down to provide you with different lessons because it's time for you to level up your energy. Whatever it may be, I can't be the only one that gets a shit ton of energies into their home all the time, where they're either coming through for a tarot reading or just a heads up, or just giving you some insight about your current reality so that you can get prepared. Maybe they're sending you spiritual, numbers, or maybe they're just trying to talk to you in your dreams as you sleep. Regardless, I do feel like our spiritual family can come in the form of just like how Winnie the Pooh is, how it helped Christopher Robin. Now, I didn't really see the movie because I thought that was kind of silly. I'm not going to watch that movie. But with the context of him kind of being an adult and he doesn't remember who Winnie the Pooh is, it's kind of like how kids, are told to be more of like a grown-up and not really be in that kid-like energy and to be free and to be happy. Whereas Winnie the Pooh was still coming through trying to have him be fearless and have him be understanding and just like go and be a kid. Like, it's okay to not be so rigid and structured and to be in alignment to what society or government says. So when I think about today, I feel like our spirit guides are in the same reference of Winnie the Pooh. They come in at the times that we need them, and we may not necessarily know this. We may not necessarily get why they're there. But when we get to the end of the lesson, we're like, wow, I can really appreciate you a lot different because I didn't think I needed to understand this months ago, days ago, whatever. Like, you're giving me a different point of view about my life now as an adult, and I can now make the right decisions that are going to be best for me without me going through things that I don't necessarily have to. And I think that's a very beautiful transition to kind of think about Winnie the Pooh and how they were spirit guides for Christopher. I truly believe Christopher, whoever made this character, like, I don't know the guy's name, but whoever made him, I'm pretty sure this is referencing his own childhood, how he wished he probably had some help or love or attention or support. And because he didn't get this from his own family, there was spiritual energies that saw the potential of this man, that they wanted to protect him so he doesn't get into a depressive way, that he doesn't overeat, that he doesn't get fearful about doing things and not wanting to take a risk. Like, there's so many things that these animals were essentially teaching him at a young age and soaking it up as a sponge and allowing him to go on these crazy weird adventures and yet still be a kid and to live free. And as we are adults, I know that my spiritual family has told me a lot of times that we just want you to live. Like, we don't need you to give us any gifts. We just want you to not be suffering. We want you to just be happy. We want you to just be in love with yourself. And the more you love yourself and try new things can come into your life that are really beautiful that you didn't even expect. But if you allow that to happen, it can absolutely be such a beautiful thing for you if you let it. And I can see that. And I hope by the end of this episode, you kind of see that for yourself of looking at Winnie the Pooh. I'm also sorry if I broke your feeling and notion about Winnie the Pooh, especially if you didn't know about how they were talking about the mental disorders. Like, of course, a man wants to give a logical standpoint of how these characters are. But I'm coming from a more spiritual mindset of seeing it from a different POV and saying, well, that could be true, but I also think that these spirit animals was giving this kid a way for him to be a kid and to not let his reality affect him. That was way more magical than anyone else could give him at that time, and he really resonated with these animals. So we are at the end of our episode. I hope you really did enjoy this. And again, I do apologize if I ruined your mindset about Winnie the Pooh, but I also hope that you're able to kind of see a little bit different now. If you did, and if you like this, please let me know in the comments or leave me a review. I would love to just hear your POV about it. Like, did you see that? Or can you now see that being a thing for Winnie the Pooh? Thank you so much for listening to Occult Media. Again, I'm Candace, your host, and I will see you at our next episode.